Mounting division in the Israeli government. The finance minister calls on Benjamin Netanyahu to present a map of Israel's final borders, while the the prime minister's aide dismissed the proposal. After a night of long battle, at least 28 people are killed when Pakistani Taliban militants stormed Pakistan's biggest airport. It could be the final nail in the coffin of peace talks. And the United States and Iran hold direct talks in Geneva in an effort to close the gaps on a final nuclear deal. Welcome back to the news today. This is the Daily Debate. Hassan Rouhani, the Iranian president, has arrived in Turkey for a two-day visit. Over the last years, Iran and Turkey have become arch rivals in dispute over the war in Syria. Is this visit a sign of a new era in the Middle East? To answer this question, with me is Iranian politics analyst Meir Javedanfar. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
And also Mr. Avi Pazner, former Israeli ambassador to Italy and France. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's start being optimistic. Maybe it is a new era for the Middle East.
I would like to be that optimistic, but I think this is
It's only Monday, Mayor.
It's part of the continuation of President Rouhani trying to carve an image for himself inside Iran as the man who's bringing out Iran out of isolation, as a man who wants Iranians to do business abroad, because Turkey is one of the biggest trade partners of Iran. It's the only country in the region where with an Iranian passport you don't need a visa. And I think this is part of it. Also, we see that the countries around Iran, including the Saudis, the Kuwaitis and other Turks, are trying to reach out to the people who they can talk to in Iran, and that's Rouhani. They can't talk to the IRGC. The IRGC doesn't have the Revolutionary Guard doesn't have a positive image of them. So I think this is just a continuation of what we've seen since the entrance of President Rouhani to the presidential office.
So before I will ask you, what does it mean, this new approach towards the Arab world, towards the Muslim world, maybe it's more correct to say. How's the West looking at this? Should the West be worried about the Muslims all around the world are starting to gather around and become closer?
I really don't
closer?
think that the Muslims all around the world are gathering, because let's not forget, those are two Islamic regimes, okay? One is a Shia Islamic regime, and the other one is a Sunni Islamic regime. And they are rivals. I mean, it's nice that Rouhani is coming to Turkey, but they are fighting, maybe not directly, but they're supporting fighting parties in Syria which are opposite. And they are on the opposite side of the fence in Syria, which I think is today one of the main problems of the Middle East. And you have Turkey helping the rebels, and you have Iran backing Assad. And this is a very big divide. This is a very big divide.
This is a very big divide, and we are talking about maybe one of the biggest wars in Islam ever, and especially since the Arab Spring started to become part of our daily lives, which is the Shiite-Sunni war, Islam war that the Muslim world is into right now. And you are seeing that these two sides, the Iranians and Turkey, are getting closer, and Iran, like you said, Meir, and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, these are again Sunni and Shiite. It's what? Is it a clue to the world? Is it saying to the world, okay, you decided to maybe put a target on Islam, on Sunni and Shiite, and we're right now going to get together, try to settle our differences, and answer back?
There are people in Iran who don't want Iran to be seen as just being pro-Shia. People who are the more moderate factions, such as former President Rafsanjani, they tried very hard to make sure that Iran is seen as the defender of Muslims, not just defender of Shia. And what is happening in Syria is making Iran look like the defender of Shia only against the Sunni people of the Middle East. But I think as long as the Revolutionary Guard is not allowing a solution to be found in Syria, and at the same time, as long as other countries supporting the jihadi in Syria are not allowing a solution to be found there, I think that war is going to continue. What we're going to see is that Iran, President Rouhani, who doesn't handle Syria, trying to trying to improve Iran's position. I think one of the things he's going to go for is Russia. The Turks import a lot of the gas from Russia. I think it's the third biggest supplier. And I think after what happened in Ukraine, they could become nervous. Iran supplies gas to Turkey. And probably Mr. Rouhani is going to come and say, look, there's already a sanction waiver, buy more gas from us, because obviously you can't rely on the Russians.
So let's look at it from a diplomatic point of view. And we want to see the diplomacy that lies behind the scenes. When you want to arrange a meeting like between President Hassan Rouhani and Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan, how do you start? Just like by sending the message that you want to get and sit down for a cup of coffee.
The technicalities are simple. They have embassies, okay? There is an Iranian embassy in Ankara and the Turkish embassy in Tehran. So this is technical. What is important here is the wish, okay, and the timing. Because you can talk about the meeting if the time is not right and if the wish is not there, there will not be a meeting. Apparently, after much up and downs in Turkish-Iranian relationship over the last 10, 11 years since Erdogan took power in Turkey, they have decided, both sides have decided, it's time to better relation. Now, how deep is that going to go? I do not know. I would look at it also from an Israeli point of view, of course. Here you have two countries, one which I could say is an enemy of Israel, Iran. Or the regime. Another one with which the relationship is very cold, Turkey, who have not been invited, both countries all have been invited but did not fully participate in the inaugural ceremony of President Assisi in Egypt. So you have those two countries. On the other hand, you have Israel and Egypt. Also a very strange relationship. Also, no official Israeli president or prime minister came to Egypt. There was an Israeli presence at the inaugural. I could see here a kind of, I don't want to say alliance of axis, no, we are far from that. But an alignment maybe, at least temporarily, between Iran and Turkey. And on the other side, you have an alignment on the ground between Egypt and Israel. I mean, strategic forces facing each other in the Middle East. I think you could see it. When in the middle, you still have the Syrian tragedy, on which Turkey and Iran are deeply divided.
So after
one point, I think I'm not speaking as an expert of Turkish affairs, but I think it will be very costly for the Turks in terms of the relationship with the Saudis and other countries in the region to be seen to be cooperating with Iran. I think what we probably could see is perhaps increase in kind of trade, but what is happening in Syria is, I think it's going to be very costly for them, for the Iranians. And there's another country I'd like to add to the equation, that's Iraq. Iran and Turkey are big competitors in Iraq. The Turkish government is supporting the Sunni. The former Prime Minister Tariq al-Hashemi, the Sunni Prime Minister, escaped to Turkey now. Iran is supporting Nouri al-Maliki. In terms of the trade, they are both competing very heavily, both in Iraq and in Iraqi Kurdistan, the Turks and the Iranians. So I think despite the rapprochement, especially commercial, between President Rouhani, not the IRGC, the President Rouhani and the Turks, I'm not so sure that we're going to see coalition. Just one thing, yes. Iranians must be watching Yair Lapid and must be getting very worried.
Why that worried?
Because Yair Lapid is pushing the current government towards peace, and this is the strategic nightmare for them when it comes to Iran, to the Iranians. To see Israel pushing for peace, this messes their game up. This really throws a spanner in their works.
So before I want to see like how messed up the plan is going to be. So you maybe started answering this by saying Iraq, but first, the song is saying first we took Manhattan, then we take New York. So they took Saudi Arabia, they took Kuwait, they took
Iran?
Turkey.
They don't take anything until the Revolutionary Guard agrees, Lucy. The Revolutionary Guard is another. And what is the song? It's not over till a fat lady sings. Well, that lady in a big Revolutionary Guard uniform hasn't sung yet.
Who is the fat lady?
Maybe the commander likes to dress up. I don't know.
Who is the so you are saying that maybe the next country that will be approached is Iraq?
Ayatollah Khamenei and the Revolutionary Guard are not allowing rapprochement with the Saudis, and until such times that there's rapprochement with the Saudis, with the blessing of the Revolutionary Guard, all we're going to see is some trade deals, some visits. You know, the Emir of Kuwait turned up in Tehran. Did you see the footage? He was almost half drunk. Must have been some great whiskey. But, you know, these things, it's great, looks great on the camera. But until such times that the Revolutionary Guard don't allow Mr. Rouhani to really reach a deal, this is going to be trade and nice diplomatic.
I would like to add, you are right about trade. I think from both point of view, Iranian, which are still isolated, want an opening for trade.
Sure.
Turkey, for Erdogan, it has been an absolute priority to better the economy.
Yes.
And I think trade with Iran, they can get energy from Iran. They got it in the past, paying with gold, getting petrol. But also look at the economical relationship between Turkey and Israel, which are growing despite the fact that the diplomatic relations are at their lowest. We never had a trade like that with Turkey. Why do I tell you that? I want to underline the point you are making. This is business, okay? This is more business than politics. And you mentioned Iraq. And here I would also like to add that Turkey and Iran are also on both sides of the issue, on the Kurdish issue. Each one has his own Kurd, okay? One could think that Iran and Turkey would cooperate against the Kurdish movement. They don't. They do at some point, but they support rival faction also. So there are very great divides on the political front, and I agree with you. It's like they say, it's all the economy stupid.
Can I just give one example
Yes,
of Turks being business, you know, in Iran during the Iran-Iraq war? The Turks, I think, was one of the most prosperous times for the Turkish economy because they sold both to Iran and to Iraq, and they had no problem looking at Iran in the face while they supplied everything to Iraq, and they had no problem looking at Saddam in the face while they supplied it. For the Turks, they have a strategic position as a transit route to where they can do business, and they make the most of it.
You know, when you came to the studio before the camera opened, I said we talked about politicians being humble, and I referred to you as a politician, and you corrected me. You told me, I'm not a politician, I'm a diplomat.
I'm a diplomat. I'm lucky not to be a politician today. Look what happens to them.
How much room of maneuver you have with this diplomatic game that Rouhani is playing? Because it seems that he's a very good diplomat, and he's playing in the diplomatic arena. But how long can he actually play this game? You
know, Israel, as you know, official Israel doesn't believe that Rouhani has a real desire for an accommodation with us, for example, okay? We don't believe that. Let's say on the official level, we do not believe that, okay? For the time being, Rouhani, I must say, has been successful on the international arena. Yes. Successful in the very fact that there are negotiations with Iran and that he is being received very well when he comes to New York to the General Assembly, and that people are running to Tehran is a proof. But as far as Israel is concerned, I must tell you, I haven't seen any change. I haven't seen any change in the Iranian position because of what you said before, that if the Revolutionary Guards don't want it, it will not happen, okay? So it might have happened with Turkey, it might happen with Saudi Arabia. I am sorry to say that I still don't see how it will, under this regime, how it will happen with Israel.
No, in terms of president, if I just compare, you can't compare Rouhani to Ahmadinejad, sir. You know, Rouhani has dropped all this, Israel must be eliminated. He's completely stayed away from the issue of Israel. Rouhani, you know, you got to remember that they will have him for lunch if he says anything nice about Israel. So he's tried to calm the situation down. He has recognized the Holocaust. His foreign minister has recognized the Holocaust. This is despite the fact that the Supreme Leader has questioned the Holocaust. You know, this little thing like tweet for Rosh Hashanah, Rouhani is trying to change things from where he is, but Ayatollah Khamenei, it's still the same Ayatollah Khamenei.
Exactly, the power is with
but
Ayatollah
we have to
Khomeini,
note where there is change. We have to note for it. We have to note it.
You know, we don't have a lot of time, but
Sure.
he is like confusing all of us, I think, because tweets on Rosh Hashanah and not denying the
Gives
Holocaust
money to the Jewish hospital in Tehran.
and giving money to Jewish hospitals in Tehran. But on the other hand, the relationship with Israel, we cannot say anything about Israel, and they're getting
Lucy, welcome to Iranian politics. This is why I'm always trying to say, welcome to Iranian politics. In Iran, there are different factions with different points of view, and we are witnessing what is happening there.
You know what I'm going to tell you right now? Welcome to Israeli politics. It's almost the same.
It's as messy as the Iranian one.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for this discussion. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes break, and then we will be back with the I-24 News One-on-One. Don't go anywhere.